Hello, hello, howdy, howdy. All right, that's so Texan. All right, wait, I'm doing okay, okay. Whoa. Oh, weird. Wait a minute. Oh, this is an unusual situation. I've never done this before. Hold on, folks. Oh, this is so strange. This is the first time, of course, on the very last day of class, for the first time ever, on the last day of class, I didn't stop the Zoom and then redo the Zoom between my last class and this, which means that there's all this old chat from the other class in the chat, which is the first time that's ever happened. And it's actually somewhat alarming. I may, hang on. All right, we're going to try this, but I'm thrown off because there's like all this old garbage chat in our chat. Not that they're garbage, but all right, I'm going to try to, why would this happen on the very last day? It's all right. It's the very last day, by the way. All right, so hello, Gabriel. Howdy, howdy, Kat. Hello, Johandri. Hello, Jasmine. Hey, Jennifer, who was super early, by the way, totally noted. I mean, other people were too, but it's okay. Anyway, hello, Rachel. Good afternoon, Quasi. Hello, yes. Oh, and happy Monday, Veronica. Hi, Crystal. Hello, Lola, and happy last day of spring semester. Yes, indeed, crazy. Right, yes, semester. Yes, well said. Hi, Kellyanna. Yes, okay, just start from the hellos. Well, that's what I'm trying to do. Right, it's warping my fragile little mind. But and smiley, smiley to you too. Oh, and people are coming in. All right, yes, I'm going to try to. But the chat gets long in this class, and it gets hard to scroll. But okay, but yes, I'm starting from the hellos. And there are more hellos coming in. One thing, let me again, I mean, this is our, whoa, see, and it's even allowing me to chat to people that are not, okay, well, anyway. What was I gonna say? Yes, oh, more people, wait, sorry. Just start from the hellos. I don't know why I find that funny, but yes, that's certainly right. Hello, Vanietta. Hello, Skyla. Okay. Oh, hello, Kameza. Oh, hello, Rahele. Awesome. Okay. Yeah, it's our last class, which is bittersweet. I mean, I'm as relieved as you are in many ways, but I'm also sad in some ways. I will tell you my one sadness is I wish you guys were Physics 101 because as much as oh, okay. No problem. Got it. Why is that funny? I don't know, but okay, got it. And if you need any quarter, no, just kidding. Okay. Yes, I will admit this. I hope that Walters said something similar. I mean, I hope this is consistent with anything he might have said last Wednesday. Like, I'm ready for the semester to end as much as you are. I mean, I don't need, I could use a break. I could get to the other side just as much as you. But I do wish this were Physics 101 because I do wish I were seeing you again. Once I've had my break, I wish you guys were coming back for another, or that I got to see you for another, because you really, really have been a great class. And I do mean that. And I hope Walters and I have made that clear. And we felt that even at the beginning with you, we felt like you were a real breath of fresh air, and you only got better and better, honestly. I mean, you became more and more enjoyable to teach, all of you, seriously. And that is saying a lot for a class that meets for 2.5 hours at 4:30 on Mondays. Like, I mean, I personally teach all day today, Monday. This is my last. I'm sure your Mondays are very long. I've got nothing left in my tank by the time I get to you at this point. And I never know how I'm going to do it. And somehow you guys make it very, very livable. And I promise you that is not just the material or something, because we've had 102 classes at this hour in other semesters and it didn't always feel this way. So I really appreciate it. And some of you have already, and so let me get bad news out of the way right away. There are some of you that I still owe things to. I think that by and large, as a group, I don't owe you anything, which is good. I mean, I think that today will be somewhat relaxed. Like, I think we're all ready to sail, or we will be ready to go into the final exam in a not very stressful way. And I think we're ready for a lot of you to get very good grades and to have learned something. And someone's coming in, sorry. And that more people are coming in. Sorry. Hello. Wait, why is this not working? Oh, okay. And that, oh no. Oh, wait, wait, are you having, I'm sorry, wait a minute. Are you having trouble here? Can you hear me? Are you, is it better now? I do. Oh, it is laggy. Actually, let me, some of you often tell me about Wi-Fi things that are, I have terrible Wi-Fi situation. Actually, let me check that for a second. Hold on. Okay. Okay. That might have improved. There might have been a lag just now where I just switched something that might have, oh yeah, maybe I should use my hotspot, but tell me, yeah, no, I'm not in the great Wi-Fi. So hopefully I just improved it somewhat, but yeah, I mean that, yeah. Oh, and more people coming. Okay, hold on. Okay. Yeah, no, I think there is lagging and things going on that are not just you guys. I mean, I think there's problems at the source here, so to speak. Um, but I do want to. There are like, as a group. First of all, I mean, my compliment goes to all of you, but also I think hopefully today. I mean, it's always a long class, but I think it's going to be somewhat relaxed. Like, sometimes by this point in the semester, there's a huge press either to scramble through all this material that hasn't gotten to yet, or like, God forbid, sometimes at this point there's like all this grading that hasn't happened yet and it's all scramble. What I think is that for the most part, as a group, we're all kind of okay and where we need to be right now, or more than okay. However, I do know that there are individuals in the room that I owe things to, and I am aware of, and I do feel bad about that. And it's partly because it's easier for like individual things to fall through the cracks, and for me, like, it's easier for me to do things in systematic piles. So I will attend to those loose ends, and I do apologize. And it's not personal to those people, to you, whoever you are. If I still owe you something big, I totally apologize, and I appreciate your indulgence, and you will get it. And if I'm a big believer, I don't like negative surprises. So if God forbid, if there's a couple of things outstanding for any one of you as individuals, and all of a sudden when I finally get it back to you, it looks like there's like bad news or something, I will talk to you individually, and you won't just be hit all of a sudden with, you're not just gonna, nobody in this room is just suddenly going to get a grade on their transcript that they totally didn't expect or couldn't have prevented or something like that. In fact, I don't think this is going to apply to anybody in this room, but I should say now before I forget. Yeah, I usually have to make this speech. I don't think this is going to apply to anybody in the room. Okay, but in the effort to tie up loose ends, like, this is the time to tie up loose ends and stuff like that. This is our last meeting. We are going to talk about the final and all that for most of the day, even though I believe that you did that with Walters. But mostly our job here today, besides saying goodbye in some nice way, is to make sure that we're all like set to take this final without too much stress and with some success. That's like the main job of today. And I should also say that might mean that some little material points do get raised for the first time today. Like, I might say a thing or two that you never heard me say before, but hopefully they'll be clarified today, and you'll see where to put them on the final and blah, blah, blah. But As far as any academic loose ends, any dangling concerns, or like, am I passing this class? A couple of things about that. First of all, in the worst case scenario, if you end up getting a grade in this class that actually doesn't seem right, and I I don't think that's probably going to happen here in this case, but if you end up getting a grade in this class, especially one that seems dramatically not right, i.e. lower than you really expected or felt you deserved, or especially since most of you know what you did on the midterm and you know what you've been doing for Walters. So if God forbid all of a sudden grade comes out from CUNY first, and then you'll, when you get that grade, you'll see what you did on the final exam or whatever. If somehow something doesn't seem right, let me just say again, I am if I haven't said this before, if something's not right with your grade, you are allowed to bring it to my attention. I keep a stack of grade change forms certainly in my office at John Jay, but also in my home at home. I have a stack of, something just came in. Sorry. I have a stack of grade change forms. I don't have any like principled or pride problem filling out. Oh, wait, someone's here. Sorry. Almost every semester, I fill out 1 or 2 grade change forms because I made a mistake somewhere and someone brings it to my attention or something. I don't have, and there's a form for that reason. And I don't want to get like, I'm not trying, I'm going to just get this out of the way right now. So there's no major panic. Like it probably won't happen in this class. And yeah, I mean, out of 4 classes I teach each semester, there's usually like 1 or 2 every semester where somehow I did make a mistake. And then all I have to do is fill out the form and turn it into my department chair like within a certain amount of time, like before before the summer semester runs out or something. And as long as I fill it out, give it to my department chair and she signs it, then it goes to the registrar and then the grade is changed. Now, again, I mean, I don't want that to happen. Like it's time consuming, whatever. I don't want any of you to be in a stressful situation where you have to bring that to my attention, but I want to make clear, just like I don't have a need for people to fail, and I don't have a need for there to be a maximum number of A's or something like that. I also don't have some need to believe that if I say your grade is your grade, then that's your grade, by God. And like, how dare you, imagine that I would make a mistake. And I also don't have some need to believe that you're supposed to like only care about physics and not care about your grades or something. So in other words, if God forbid, if Quark forbid, you get a final grade on CUNY first, and Quark forbid, let's be realistic about this, I'm going to have a lot of final exams to grade. Like all the final exams are going to come in at 11:59 on Tuesday night of next week from all my classes. And I'm going to have a very short turnaround to do all the final exams and put in all the grades. And that's always a major crunch. So it's what is possible in many of your cases is that what is possible is that you'll see your grade on CUNY first before you get a full breakdown from me of everything that happened and why. Like I try to get the breakdown to people first, but sometimes it's just too hard. I have to get the grades in. And usually people are okay because usually they're happy with their grade and they were not surprised by their grade. So then they see the details of it a little bit later and it's like all okay. That might happen to you guys. You might find out your grade before you find out the full breakdown. And probably it won't be some major surprise what your grade is. But here's the thing, if you get a grade that does really surprise you or upset you, like please know that I'm open to that possibility and it doesn't rock my world in a bad way. As long I won't be defensive and I'll totally just like look at it and solve it and be happy if your grade goes up if I made a mistake. But just please know that for 2 reasons. One, so that you don't panic. If you get a grade that you weren't expecting or it seems like a surprise, and especially if you think it's a mistake, don't freak out. Like I will correct. But similarly, in the same way that I don't want you to freak out or panic or think that the world is over or there's no second chance or blah or something, also don't come at me with like a machine gun, please. Like that's usually a very stressful week. And none of you in the room seems like that type of person anyway, or has been. But the week that grades have to go in and then they come out is like super stressful for everybody, more so for you guys, but also for us, it's super stressful. So as long as we both know that I can make mistakes and you can calmly, politely text me and say, Professor, I was wondering, like, I feel like, I'm not sure how I ended up with a B+. I thought I did well on the final, whatever. And maybe give me like breathing room, like give me a day or something before you do that. But as long as you're polite about it and cool about it, and like you're asking what the situation is, then I will happily work with you, and I'll be just as interested as you, whoever you are, all of you. If it turns out that your grade should be higher than what appeared on CUNY First, I'll be just as happy as you to fix it and find that out, as long as we like work together and view it that way. So I'm saying that now a little bit defensively, because that always gets to be a little bit of a rough thing, right? For everybody. Nobody likes to be surprised on CUNY First, but also nobody likes to be like under attack, which sometimes can happen when people are panicking. So, and also, and I guess I'm also saying this because I know that you've had teachers in high school, and I know you've had professors at John Jay who are so sure that they're always right, that like once they put a grade, they're very hard to argue off the ledge. I know that. Or they're very hard to find. Well, I'm hard to find, but you can text me. But I know that sometimes a grade on CUNY First can look like a death sentence, because it looks like now there's no wiggle room, and now you have to like do a whole protest thing. And so if I were you and I got something I didn't deserve or felt I didn't deserve on CUNY First, I too also might come in guns blazing, because I too would be used to professors having shields up. I'm putting my shield up now. My shield is in advance, like I surrender. If there's an issue, I promise that's distinctly possible, and we'll work it out. As long as we're both polite and friendly to each other, we will. And it's just a matter of signing a form and turning in, no problem. Okay. So that's just to get the worst case scenario out of the way. Because I also just know that negative surprises are like, nobody likes them. Okay, so if God forbid you get a grade on CUNY First that really seems wrong, just like wait like one day, just so I can catch up on sleep, and then just politely text me. I'm just curious, whatever, just phrase it as a question, not as a statement, and we'll be good. That's one thing. The other thing, though, that's a little bit more maybe surprising, or that you need to know, because there's a major crunch in that last week. Like, you hate final exams, I hate them for you, but then the minute you've turned yours in, then it's our turn to be under major fire. And I don't know if I told you this, but 1 year I did not get my grade. No, 2 years actually. Twice in like the 12 years that I've been here, something. I didn't get my grades in on time. Oh my God. It's bad. For me to not get my grades in on time, that's when, like, if there was ever any time that I was in deep trouble, it was those 2 times. I'm never doing that again. I'm getting my grades in on time. I promise you, I suffer enormous consequences if I don't get my grades in on time, whatever they're due. So you'll get your grade on CUNY First when you're supposed to. I might be the last, it might be the last one you get, but you'll get your grade on CUNY First when you're supposed to. But because there is a rush to do that, here's the one thing I have to warn all of you. Again, this is just like getting these things out of the way before they're a problem. In the event that I'm scrambling that week to grade stuff and do stuff and get you your grades, let's say that I come across some confusing surprise at the 11th hour. Like, say, God forbid, one of you didn't turn in a final exam for whatever reason, and maybe it's a totally legitimate reason. And maybe you even sent me an email that I missed, or maybe you didn't, or whatever. But let's say all of a sudden something's missing. Or here's more realistically, let's say all of you did like turn in your midterms, and let's say all of you do turn in your final exam, but for some reason, let's say one of you like totally missed the instructions or totally misunderstood the whole thing, or gave me a document that I couldn't read or something, and I'm finding this out. Or just like, let's say you did everything you're supposed to, but you're about to fail the class. And I'm finding this out at the 11th hour, but you've been here all along. But now I'm looking at the numbers, and like, God forbid, let's just say for some reason, I'm realizing right at the 11th hour that you're about to get an F or D in the class. And if in my heart, you didn't see that coming at all, like, or if in my heart, I felt like if I had known everything, I could have warned you of that, but I didn't, or something like that. Just something like that, where there's about to be a very negative surprise that's about to happen too late. Then what I frequently do is I put incomplete. Okay. Like, technically, there's only certain circumstances where we're ever supposed to use incomplete. But I'm admitting right now on this recording, I use incomplete when at the 11th hour, I feel that I have an incomplete understanding of what is going on with a certain student. If suddenly it looks like a student's about to fail, and I feel like, whoa, wait a minute, maybe I'm missing something that they never gave me, or maybe they gave me everything, but they really didn't get what the final exam was about. And oh my God, like if they had understood the final exam, this wouldn't have had, or something. I will, because I don't like just surprise failing people, or because I feel like there should still be, if something is incomplete in my understanding of what is going on with one of you at the 11th hour, then I will give you an incomplete. And what that is telling you is, please contact me. Like, it might mean that you literally owe me something, which is what incomplete is supposed to be used for. But it's really supposed to be used if you owe me something and you got a medical reason and we all worked it out. But if there is something outstanding and you either owe me something or I'm not sure what's going on, maybe I owe you something and I just don't know. But I know that if I were to put a grade right now, it would be an F or a D. I will often put an incomplete as a way of telling you, please, like, again, wait a day because I might be under siege or catching up sleep, wait a day, but then text me and say politely, I'm looking to see how I can, why I got an incomplete or what you need or what I can fix. Okay. And then what we will do is have a Zoom meeting or we'll talk on the phone and we'll figure out together what the deal is. And it might even be something like, I'm like, listen, can you just redo the final exam? Because I think there was a major misfire here. And I just want to give you more time to redo and resubmit, and then we'll be fine. Like, it might not be something that was actually your fault, or it might be. But I use incomplete to mean I have an incomplete understanding, and I'm not supposed to do that, but I do. So if you get an incomplete to me, don't panic. I mean, from me, don't panic, don't freak out. And also know, if you've never gotten one before, I mean, they are supposed to be used for cases where, like, there's a medical reason that you couldn't do the final. And so we're saying as soon as we get the final from you, then we'll change it. That's what they're supposed to be used for. But what they mean in the end, just to make it clear to all of you, what incomplete means, it literally does mean there's no grade going in until a situation gets resolved. And then once the situation is resolved, a grade goes in, and the grade is the grade. Like, incomplete does not affect your average. It does not affect your transcript. It's just a placeholder as long as we get the situation resolved somewhat quickly. And I'm always, and this kind of changes sometimes. Like, we don't have that much time, but we have a couple of weeks or something. As long as we work it out and you get me whatever, or we make a deal, then I grade the thing, and then you get whatever grade you get, that becomes your grade, and it becomes as though the incomplete never happened, as long as we deal with it quickly enough. So that's my last way that I'm trying to tell everybody. And again, I know it's like I sound all spazzy on this, but because nothing scares me more, frankly, than just like the boom being lowered and saying you've run out of chances, it's over, you're dead. Like, I hate that feeling, and I hate it for you guys. So, and I especially hate it if it comes out of nowhere. So if you get an incomplete, don't take it as no, we're holding our breath and we're not lowering the boom. But it does put the ball in your court. If you get an incomplete, please text me and politely say, okay, what are our next steps? And we'll figure them out. Okay, I'm going to stop right. Does that make sense? I didn't even look at the chat there. Maybe things, but does that make sense to people? Like, can I get it? Sorry. Okay. I do know how you. Okay. But does that make, or if you're not from Texas, does that make sense? Or does the incomplete, can I just get any show of hands or anything to get the incomplete? Okay, yes, okay, or that's, yes, okay, cool. Thank you. All right, okay, yes, sir, okay. Okay, so that's a long way of saying that's probably the worst thing that might happen on your on CUNY first from me is that, and then we'll just deal with it that way. Okay, and they're trying to get stricter about that, and I think it's because of me, because they know I abuse the system, but whatever. Okay. I'm tempted. I almost have not funny, but I have a certain weird personal story about guns and sort of Texas, but I'm not sure if I'm going to tell it right now, but it's on my mind. But okay, that's that. My next question. Oh, also, some of you, and I'm very flattered, like some of you have already approached me about future things like recommendations, and I'm thrilled. And if any of you has sent me an email and I didn't respond, then I apologize. But particularly in this class, if there's any way I can help you in your future one way or another, And if I can't, I will tell you personally, no, I don't feel like I know you well enough or whatever, but none of you should not be asking. I mean, none of you should feel like you're out of bounds for asking me. If you've sent me an email or something, then I apologize. Please send me a text, and I'll put that one last time in the thing. But also, if I've already agreed for any of you, if I've agreed to do anything to help, I hope I haven't already blown it. Like any kind of letter or recommendation or anything. One thing that and I'll put this in the chat right now. Oh my God, Discord, Jesus. Um, I kind of wanted just to learn. My son always talks about Discord, and I'm still kind of intimidated by it. But one thing is, and this applies to future too. If even next semester you suddenly realize that you want to ask me for some kind of support or help, which I would be thrilled to do as long as I can do it, then, and this is what I'm going to put in the chat, then the deal is your instincts, those of you who've already pursued this, and I'm not telling you to do it if you're not. I mean, this is not, believe me, this is not I'm not looking to write more letters or something, but if I can help you in any way, I'm putting in the chat. Then, well, I'll just write it. This is kind of important because I am, as some of you are seeing, I mean, I am scattered, not as organized as some of you. I do get scattered easily. So if I can support you in any way, the official email that you should use is Yaverbaum@jj, is the thing I just put in the, when if another school or online thing asks what my email is, that's the one you give them. That's where you should send all documentation to, like, as opposed to the one that we use in Google Classroom. But if there's deadline, once there's as deadlines approach and stuff, please text me, and the deal with that for all of you is like, or for any of you to whom it's relevant, like, you're allowed to nag me by text as deadlines approach. Like, oh, be polite, sure, but like 3 days, a week before a deadline, you could just like text casually, just casual, gentle reminder that deadline for my rec is in a week, and then 3 days later, you could be like, just a casual reminder, 3 days till my rec. I will not be insulted if you do that. And in fact, I would greatly appreciate it. And in one day before, please let me, and often my recs do go in on the day that they're due, which is always fine. But they don't go in late, but they can often go in on the day that they're due. So please, just if you could just keep me informed by text about deadlines, that will make it better for both you and I, whoever you are. But then, yes, all official documentation I'll find in the emails as I need them, or all links and stuff like that. Okay, you get what I'm saying, I think. So, all right, so that's that. I'm just, again, these are just like loose ends to tie up before I never see you again. Okay. Also, quick last thing, I'm sure you've heard, we don't need to get into all this now. Maybe we will at the end of the class. I'm sure you've heard that now what is actually happening with your lives in the fall at John Jay is a total fascinating mystery. I'm sure you've heard, like, at one point it was 90% of everything was still online remote for the fall. Then like 2 weeks ago, a mandate came from the CUNY chancellor that said 60% of everything in the fall has to be in person, which meant that people had to be required. I mean, that they were going to require vaccinations and or COVID tests of everybody to be on campus. So we have to like redo all our schedules. But then now there's like backlash against that because that's crazy town and it's like very sudden and they can't possibly enforce that and yada, yada, yada. So for whatever it's worth, if you're hearing rumors back and forth about like schedules being redone for the fall or things being up in the air for the fall, you're right. Everything is like a mess for the fall. I literally don't know what physics is going to look like in the fall or what other classes are going to look like. But I think even if I did think I knew, and even if I told you, I think it's going to change again in a week. So that's fascinating. But anyway, there's that. Okay. That's all that. Now to get to more mundane or realistic or practical matters for us. What I want to do momentarily is share on one of my screens the document that essentially is supposed to be your final exam. I believe, wait, I missed a lot of chat. Hold on a second. Are you serious? Walter's it? Oh, well, I did not see that coming. Well, then maybe all right, maybe I should talk. I mean, am I allowed to admit that I only indirectly know what Discord is through my son, but I've never actually. Okay. I guess I have to. All right. I guess I have to learn about this. Oh, yeah, he does, dude. That's right. He's been telling me. He says it's better than Zoom, that he wishes classes were on Discord rather than Zoom. All right. Well, I'll look into, well, thank you. I guess I have to. Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Well, it's way overdue that I learn what it's like to be on Discord. I mean, yeah, I feel very behind that I don't know what that's like. So I guess okay, interesting. Oh, well, there you go. All right, I am going to copy that. I don't know what I'm going to do. Oh, whoa, the ball's in my court. Them's fighting words. Speaking of guns, hold on. I'm copying this now. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but I am copy. Oh, I can't copy it? Oh, no. What? Oh, copy. Okay. And again, if I haven't, oh, there it is. All right, it's in my like permanent clipboard. Okay, and it's the only Discord that's there, so it must be your class. And if I haven't mentioned, watch the YouTuber Gus. I know I've mentioned this a million times, but you got to watch Gus Johnson do his YouTube called like How to Be a Professor or whatever, and make fun of professors trying to use technology. It really it's so okay. Oh my god. Oh my god. That does make me feel better. That's hilarious. Okay. All right. I'm going to look into this. I'm nervous, but I'm going to look into this. I'm going to feel old. If I didn't want to feel old, I guess I could shave. Okay. But speaking of my friend Walters, my good friend Walters, I'm allowed to tell you secrets about Walters now that we're done, aren't I? Very interesting. Yeah, wait, Ken. You all know Walters, but you don't know, you know Professor J. Walters, but you guys do you guys know Professor H. Walters? The other, wait, yeah, I think I'm about to, I think. And then we have to get to him. But do you, one bean to spill on him is, are any of you aware? I don't remember who you had for 101 lab. I know you had Lou. Well, I know, or do you know Professor? Okay, well, does any of you know of or have heard of Professor H. Walters? The other Professor Walters? Who? No. Oh, okay. Then what I have to say won't be as fun. But yes. All right. So there's another. Okay. Okay. And I know I'm going to regret this because I know there are things about the final exam that we do have to say, and I'm totally stalling. But okay. But all right. So there's here's the physics. The physics faculty at John Jay is Yaverbaum, Lou, Wu, Walters H, and Walters J. There's two Walters. So, okay, like there's four people and me, at least as of the last, I mean, there's been other people, but the stable set of physics people seems to be us five. Someone named Lou, someone named Wu, someone named Walters, comma J, and someone named Walters, comma H. Okay, first of all, and I guess unfortunately you haven't had the pleasure of having Walters H, but she rocks. I love her as much as I love him. And I mean that in a physics way. But yes, they are married to each other. They are husband and wife. B, it may or may not surprise you to know that they were, as is the case with everybody so everybody who teaches physics at John Jay, besides me, was a student of mine at some point. And even other professors that we've had at other physics people that we've had at John Jay in other semesters were students of mine at other places. Like, I mean, for good or for bad, that's how I hire. Because at least it means that they understand me. So Walters and Walters were both students of mine a fairly long time ago. so first of all, they're married, and that's sort of interesting because like a lot of people do have both of them and have no idea that they're married, and they try to keep that on the DL these days, and I'm not allowed to say it for some reason these days, but so now or at least not in the middle of the semester, I'm not, but so now I am saying it. But what's sort of more interesting than that they're married, and I love them both. I really do. And they also, the son of mine that you've seen on this class many times, like they take care of him a lot, or certainly did before COVID. And his skill in video games and chess is largely a result of their care, not mine, which thank God. And I think that the way they teach him video games is like actually more educational than the way most schools teach him anything. But anyway, those two, the Walterses, who are married and who were both students of mine, well, when they were students of mine, I mean, this is the amazing thing. I think this is amazing. So they were both in physics 203 with me, and then physics 204. When I had them in physics 203, I knew I liked them both for different reasons. I suspected that something was going on between the two of them from the way they acted. Like they were very civilized and everything in class. But I started to suspect at some point in the middle of the semester that they were dating or something like that. And then I started suspecting that they had met and had started dating in my class, which I was starting to take personal, I was starting to take as a point of pride. I was actually starting to be really psyched to think that these two people had met in my physics class because I thought they actually made an amazing couple. Now they do make an amazing couple, and they weren't married at the time. It turns out they were dating, but they didn't meet in my class. They had met in the class before in chemistry, like one semester before. They met in chemistry or during chemistry. They started dating. They were dating in my class, again, discreetly, but not that discreetly. They were awesome. They continued dating. And then here's what happened. Here's fact number one that blows my mind. They went through all of John Jay to get, the John Jay Forensic Science program. They both went through with one exception. They took every single class together. Like once they met in chemistry and started dating, they deliberately worked out their schedules every semester so that they matched up, and they were, or at least they were in every single forensic science class, with one exception that I can't remember what it was, but there was one exception. But other than the one exception, they were in every single forensic science class together. They took it together, did the work together. They combined their different strengths and weaknesses together, and they both did have they were very yin and yang about the way they worked. But they literally coordinated their schedules so that they took everything together, and when possible, therefore, they were lab partners, and when not possible, they weren't. But now, first of all, and they're still married to this day. I mean, they weren't married then; they eventually got married and all that. But they're like they're an amazing couple in my opinion to this day. But one thing is, like, I don't know about you guys, like I barely managed to work out my own schedule getting through college. Like I could barely make a schedule that worked for me and got me through college in 4 years or 5. In my case, it was 4 years, but in forensic science, it's often 5 years, and total respect there. But like I could barely work out a schedule that worked for me. The idea of coordinating a schedule with another person with that consistency is absolutely staggering to my mind. The idea of even wanting to, let alone pulling it off, that's totally staggering. But the other thing is, it's totally cute. Yeah, I mean, it is super cute. I mean, I think that's why they don't like me talking about this, because it's almost like cringily cute, I suppose. But I think I'm allowed to say it at this, well, I don't know, whatever. But here's the other thing I mean, and again, I don't even know why I'm wasting your time talking about this, but maybe it's just like, this is how much real is real at John Jay. Like, real relationships are real. They, as I say, they dated for a long time, and they graduated, and somewhere along, and after they graduated, somewhere in there, they got jobs. First, they were like lab tech. It's the way it works. I mean, first they were lab techs, and then they worked their way up, whatever. And I'm very, very pleased that they did. But then somewhere along the way, when we were already friends and colleagues, or then we were all working together, and they got these jobs, then they had their official wedding. I mean, I think they technically legally got married somewhere along the way, because they're from 2 different countries. But But then they eventually had like a big old traditional, like American or Italian American, whatever, wedding, like way out on Long Island, which I was invited to. And I went to, and I was very honored and flattered to be there. And I didn't expect this, but I got there, and there was, and they all, I mean, they had tons of people from other generations and their family and stuff there, but they also had like all of their friends, which meant all the friends that they had graduated from John Jay with for the most part, like tons, and they had similar friends. So there was tons of all these John Jay alum at this wedding, which made it sort of exciting and fun for me. And I didn't expect that. But the part that I'm saying that is maybe dangerous to say, or maybe it's self-indulgent to say this, but again, just as another note that, this isn't all just a grind. This is about a human experience and stuff like that. Like, they asked me to give a toast at their wedding. And so I did, and it was an honor to do that. But what they didn't realize is that my way, I was nervous about the toast and everything. I didn't know exactly what I was going to say or how to shut up. And, I only know how to talk in 75-minute blocks for the most part. And I usually like source material. Like, I'm used to like teaching things, not just like talking casually. So for the toast, what I found the very first lab report that the two of them had written together for Physics 203. Somehow I still had it. And I had the grade on it and everything. So at their wedding, in front of their families and everything, whom I was meeting for the first time at this point, I actually read out comments from their lab report that they had written years and years prior, and found passages in the lab report where they had it was so weird. They wrote the lab report, but in certain parts of it, they wrote in the first person singular, like I then, put the ball on the track and I measured it. But at other points in the lab report, they had written in the first person plural, like we then, it was careless. I mean, it was a mistake. Like, you're not supposed to switch, like you're not even really supposed to be in the first person anyway in a lab report. But they had accidentally switched back and forth between I and we in this lab report, in the first lab report that they had handed in physics. And so I read this thing out loud and embarrassed them, I guess, in front of everybody. And my point was kind of like, even then they couldn't distinguish between the two of them. Like, they were such a group. Even at that time, they didn't know where one person's thoughts were ending and the other person's were beginning. And it was I have to say, their wedding was one of the happier days in my life. Like, I got a big kick out of it and everything, but they are that cool. He is that cool. I mean, like I care about him that much, I guess is another way to put it. And I totally trust the education and the care of my child to him and her. You don't know her, but she is, if you think he's cool, she's that cool too. And I am like the luckiest man on earth to have people like that doing physics, with me here. And so if nothing else, if there's a moral to the whole story, is after this whole thing is over and stuff, and if you guys are suffering at the end of your John Jay careers and you're on to the bigger and better, but things don't work out, there's always a plan B here, and there's always there's always a fallback position that can turn into something deeper than you might think. I guess is my way of saying. And when they say that John Jay is a family, they really mean it. All right, so that's unacceptable. Okay, wait. Oh, wow. Oh, cool. Okay, I won't respond to that. That's interesting. I didn't know that. Okay, so there you go. So yeah, so for those of us who are suffering through the John Jay thing, there are benefits, I guess is the other way of putting it. But yeah, cool. I'm seeing things in the private chat that are sort of interesting. All right, but I probably spent way longer on that than I should have. Got it. Right. Okay, but now that was like, speaking of Walters, my understanding is that last Wednesday, he did sort of walk you through the final document and explain and go over the things and like what you're supposed to do for it for us. I do want to now be sort of serious and make sure we're all okay with this. So first of all, is that true? I mean, can you confirm or deny, like, did you walk through the final with him last Wednesday? Yes, we did. Okay, cool. All right. And not all of it. Okay. Good thing we still have time. So what I'm going to do now is screen share. I'm going to pull up what I think is the document that we're talking about. And first of all, you're going to confirm or deny whether it's the right document. Okay. So first of all, this thing that's on the screen right now, this is what you talked about last Wednesday, right? I mean, this is the right document. Yes. That's a yeah. Okay, thank you. Okay. All right, cool, cool. Okay. Okay.
Actually, this looks a little different, I think.
Does it? Oh, okay. Though that's important.
Hold on. One sec.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's different. Do you want me to share my screen, Professor?
Yes, please. That would be great. Oh, and I'll turn off mine. Yeah. Okay. How do I do this? Oh. Okay. Oh, yeah.
This is what we did.
Oh, yes, yes.
So I think it's different than that.
Yeah. No, you're right. No, that's good. Okay. Good. No, thank you for that correction. That I was actually concerned. Okay. That's good. Now give me a second. Let me see if okay. Yes, I want to talk about the right one. Definitely. Hold on. Hmm. That is interesting. Oh. I see. Okay. Bear with me for a second. No, that's good. I'm very glad that you just pointed that out. Let me make out. This is why we're here today. Let's make. That is. Huh. Okay. I'm very glad that Kat just did that. I think I'm going to ask you, can you please actually put, oh, I think it just starts at page 7, but same file. Could you put that back up? Where, what you, in fact,
You want me to put it back up?
I think so, please. Yeah, I mean, yes, please. Because now actually I am slightly confused and I want to make sure I don't, so yes, please. Okay. Hmm. Oh, and you put in the, oh, thank you. Okay. Yeah, leave it up. That's great. And thank you, Veronica, for putting this. I'm also gonna, yes. Well, all right. So I especially if you guys are saying that he went over stuff, but not all of it, then definitely we want to make sure that all of it is discussed here. So I definitely want what Kat has up. I want to leave up for a moment, please, or maybe a long. And in fact, oh, and there's other people coming in. And Kat, could you, in fact, and I want to make sure that I have, and I'm downloading the thing that Veronica just put in, but Kat, can you, oh, in fact, final review lab. I guess, actually, can you show me where, like that thing that you just, I mean, it's true. The document I have is probably incredibly similar to that, but I want to make sure we're looking at the exact same one. So the document that you just put up, Kat, is in Google Classroom, right?
Yeah, it's called Spring 21 Physics 102 Final Review Lab. And this is what we worked off in class
Right.
last Wednesday.
And that's why I want to make sure to work the same thing. But why am I not seeing it in my, and it's in, is it in the, oh,
I think it's just titled Motion Final, all caps, like right here.
oh, motion final. Oh, now I see it. Okay, okay, thank you. Okay. Yeah. Oh, I see. Oh, okay, okay, okay. Thank you. All right, all right. And did he, all right, so I'm gonna put up, okay, now I see it. Thank you. Okay, I see what he did. All right, all right. That, I'm glad we're having this discussion because, okay. Okay. Okay, no, I'm sorry I'm pausing so long. I am, there, I take back everything nice I just said about him. No, no, no. I want to make sure I'm doing the exact same thing he's doing. And yeah, I guess we had a slight stream cross, which is totally fine. So, all right, I'm going to switch. Now I see, oh, no problem, no problem. First is your second. First is your second. Okay, and thank you, Veronica and Veronica. Right. I mean, we have more than one document flying around, so I want to make sure not to. So the thing but the thing that Kat has up on the screen right now is the thing that you guys went over with Walt. I mean, I know you didn't go over all of it, and that's what I'm here to do, but that is what you're all saying is what you went over with Walters, right?
Yeah. Unless I'm totally losing my mind.
I'm sure you're not. I may be slightly right now, but okay. Then the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to take the screen back just so that I can, but I have that now. So thank you. So I will now put that. Okay, right. So now I'm just showing the exact same thing that Kat was a second ago, but now I'm showing it just so I can scroll around. So thank you. So first thing I want to ask you guys, but first, well, he didn't get to everything, so we'll get to the rest right now. But he explained the instructions, and do you guys feel like you get what the basic instructions are for this and what to do in general, like the format of it? Is that a yes? Okay. So if you do, if that's a yes tacitly, can I ask what did he not get to with this, or what? Yeah, what did we not talk about here? Meaning the thing you didn't talk about is when it's due. Is that what you're saying in the chat?
So
Oh,
I think we got to all of part 1 except for Z, I, or X, because I think he was saying he wasn't sure if that material was going to get taught today.
Okay, right.
I think
Okay.
if I'm wrong about that, someone else chime in.
That's exactly what that's kind of what I do want. No, you're not wrong. That's what I want to hear. Whether okay, so he said that. Okay, and that
And
is
I think we did all of the rest of part one. I think, right, guys? Okay.
okay.
And then part two. Hold on. I don't think we did part two except for a few of them. Right? Hold on, let me look at my notes. I knew we did all of the part 5,
Okay.
I think.
Right. Yeah, I would imagine. Okay, I think I get what's going. Okay, this totally makes sense. Oh, only if you, not the whole thing. Okay. No, I appreciate it. Sorry, I know this is all very okay. What I am here to do today, yes, this is basically going to be your exam. Um, in fact, before this class is over, by the time this class is over, what we will have done is for part 2 we only did T. For part 2 you only did T. Oh. Okay. I think I'm totally clear on what's going on. All right. Here's what's going to happen and how much time we have. And okay, so we still, for good or for bad, we still have like an hour and 40 minutes. Here's what's going to happen in an hour and 40 minutes. Number one is by the time the class is over, hopefully at around 6, please remind me, at around 6:30 or 6:45, I will pause whatever I'm doing, whatever material we're in or whatever we're saying, we're going to pause and I'm going to, like right then in the middle of class, I'm going to set up the portal with this actual or the edited version of this document in the portal, and I'm going to put it like before we're done. The portal will be there that will officially say that this is your exam that is due 11:59 Tuesday, May 25th. Okay. In other words, like just to be as clear as I can, I think we've said this 100 times, but like your final exam, you're going to do on your own time, in your own way, take home with talking to other people and with us giving you help right now and all that. But officially, it will be due back to us before midnight on Tuesday, the 25th, because that's the end of exam period. And it's going to be due to us through a Google assignment portal, just like your midterm was. So just to be as unambiguous as possible, we'll have the portal set up and official by the end of this class. Please remind me, like at 6:30, around 6:30, just remind me to stop whatever I'm doing and make the portal so that you see it, so that we all know. In other words, when you leave this class, the final exam has been posted. Like you don't have to wait another day or something like that. We're just going to do it by the end of this class so that we all know that we're walking away from here with the final exam posted and with it due back to us by midnight of Tuesday, the 25th. So does that make sense so far? Okay. And if nothing else, like that's my biggest job for today. And even if no one tunes into anything else for the next hour or whatever, like you'll have the document and you'll know, hopefully, that that's what you're supposed to do is turn it around to us by Tuesday midnight next week. Now, until that time, until 6:30, yes, what I would like to do here is address the questions that you didn't do with him. Like some of them you just didn't get to, and I may leave it up to you to figure them out. Like some of the ones in part 2, I understand you might just not have had time to go through, and I think we don't necessarily have to solve every single question on the final exam for you in order for you to take it. But some of them, for sure, exactly the ones you said, and this is why I wanted to make sure we had the right document. What I did know going into today, I did know for a fact that there were some questions in the exam that he wouldn't have talked about because he wouldn't know whether I was going to talk about them or not. And there are different letters in each different document. So that's why I wanted to make sure we had the same document. So like what I'm trying to specifically say is I am here to explain to you for the first and last time the material that underlies question question Z, question I, and question X, like just like Kat put in the chat, like Z. So if you go, sorry, if I, yeah, I'm scrolling here. If you go to question Z, if you go to page 3 and page 4, you'll see a question Z, a question I, and a question X. Right. He did not say anything about them because I have not said anything about what's going on behind those questions. I want to, or at least not enough. I want to say some stuff about them now. This would be like new notes that we would take. And they are, and they will be the final cap on all this material. Z, I, and X. That's what I'm about to do in a second. I'm just taking a breath, but okay. So I'm going to turn, if I would ask you guys to keep this document in front of you. I'm going to turn off the document now. I mean, I'm going to keep my screen share and I'm going to start like doing some notes for you. So we are going to like learn something. I hate to say. So we're going to take notes. Again, this won't be too hard or too crazy and won't take too long, but it's just to put these things in perspective. So please keep this thing in front of you. I may ask you for the numbers again in a moment, but all right. So again, to bring everybody back in the fold, question I in part 1 refers to like light going through a crack and then through 2 slits in a barrier, and then it says some things about what appears on the screen on the other side from these 2 slits. What I'm here to do is I just want to put in perspective for you why we're talking about 2 slits at all, what this thing is about. So here's what it's about. Okay. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Oh, yes. So Skyla's thing. So sorry. So I want to just I want to teach some last things here in the class today, not hard things and not major number crunching things, just like some last concepts to you to put this all together. And they come up in these like random questions on the final. But yes, to answer Skyla's question, the actual final, yes, the actual final exam will be due 11:59 p.m. on the 25th. That is correct. And the actual final, the document itself, we will have posted by the end of this class period today. Like you'll remind me at 6:30 or something to back up and post, and it'll be very much like this document that you have in front of you. But so I'm here to sort of answer whatever is still in it that we haven't discussed. But yes, it will be due 11:59 Tuesday the 25th. That's right. Now, what I'm trying to explain right now, or about to explain right now, is what's going on behind question I of that sheet. Whether or not you actually end up having to crunch numbers for it or not, we'll know by 6:30. But I want you to know the concept that's behind it and why it's there. And I'm going to do the same thing for Z and X, the other two questions that Kat mentioned and other people mentioned, the other two questions that like are about material that you like, you don't know what the material is. Z and X happen to be the same thing, which is good. So in other words, I'm going to give you this concept here that's in part I, and I'm going to give you the concept that's in part Z and X. You'll see that both of these concepts I've been alluding to all semester, like neither of these is going to be totally new to you, but it's just for the sake of putting this all together. Because again, as hopefully I said last week, and hopefully Walter's made clear, like the reason you have all these random questions that are sort of like all the questions look hard to read and they're sort of annoying that they're like tilted this way and that, and they have random letters like Z, X, and I. That's all a little bit overly cutesy and a little bit overly much, and I regret that. But the whole concept is supposed to be that you have these fragments of information that we want you to know, but much more important than the fragments of information, your goal by the end of the exam is to put them together into an order and see why all these seemingly random bits of information actually fit together into a structured argument that proves something. Like that's the point of the exam. That's the point of the course. So I'm filling in those last bits for you right now, whether or not you have to number crunch them or not. So one random, and it's two random bits that's left. One is the random bit of concept that is behind part I of, or question I of part one. What they're alluding to in that part is an experiment that was first done by Thomas Young in like 1804, or I think it's 1804. And it's called the two slit experiment, or called the double slit experiment, or called double slit interference, or two slit interference, or two slit diffraction. You hear about it in a ton of science classes. I'm sure many of you have heard about it many times. In fact, often you can hear about it so much that it starts becoming a complete annoyance. Like it can be one of those things that you hear about enough that you start just like tuning out because it becomes such a cliche. I'm here in hopes of slightly resurrecting that cliche before you hate it entirely. Like there's a reason it comes up all the time. And it's easy to underestimate or to dismiss. So there's this experiment called the two slit experiment. Again, originally done in turn of the 19th century, but it's been done and redone and redone and redone. Like it's still redone to this day with increasingly advanced technology, by which I mean, for starters, when it was first done in 1804, it was done with light. I mean, it's ultimately an experiment that's largely about the nature of light. It was done with light in 1804, but let's make no mistake, we didn't have lasers in 1804. We didn't have light bulbs in 1804. I mean, nobody had light bulbs in 1804. So when this is first done in 1804, what you have, I mean, it's a major technological triumph when it's first done. Sorry. Try one more time. Sorry. This is the kind of thing Walters could do much better than I. Well, just have to go with Okay. What's happening in 1804 is Thomas Young takes a beam of light, sometimes from a candle, sometimes from the sun. Either way, he focuses the light very intensely through a lens that, like just like a trunk of glass. But he takes a bunch of natural light, he focuses it through a lens, and then sends the light through like a slit in a barrier, like there's an opaque barrier, something that blocks the light, but then there's like a tiny slit in that barrier. The light goes through. It's already been focused heavily by a lens. It now goes through this slit in a barrier. And now it goes to another barrier that has two tiny slits in that barrier. And the light goes through those two tiny slits and spreads out from the slits in all directions, as light does. And on the other side of the lab, or on the other side of this whole apparatus, there's a screen. Okay. And again, I know that you've heard of this before in some way or another, but let me just try to explain it my way, in hopes that that might help us appreciate it. All he's doing is sending a highly columnated, a highly focused beam of light first through one slit, just to help make sure that it is a focused, columnated, like thin beam. Again, kind of to replicate the kind of effects that today we would use a laser for, but he totally didn't have lasers, and he didn't even have light bulbs. So he makes this really thin beam of light, but then it reaches a screen and it has two slits that the light can go through, and it goes through both the slits, and it spreads out through both the slits. So for starters, what we're saying is we have a beam of light that's been split into two sort of twin beams, or two half beams, if you like. And at each of those slits, the light in effect starts all over again. Like each of those slits acts as its own original source of light. It's almost like it's a little sun, or it's a little candle, or whatever. But the reason but by using one beam and splitting it into two this way, he could guarantee, or at least as best as he could, he assured himself as best as he could, that whatever properties one beam had after it went out of one slit were identical to the properties of the beam in the other slit. Like it is two beams being formed from one. So we can sort of believe that they're all the same. All this light is like the same color, the same intensity, things like that. Okay, and again, today we would use a laser beam to do this, and we'd also use other materials besides just light. But and then he's got this screen on the other side. Okay, and the whole idea is to see what happens, what kind of pattern, or what. Oh, cool. Okay, the whole idea is to see sort of what happens on the other side on the screen. And again, okay. So what do we find on the other screen? Well, here's the thing that we find on the other screen, at least in the general way of doing this experiment, the way he did the experiment. What happens on the other side, what we see on the other side, and this is a fairly terrible drawing. This is also something Walters would do a lot better. But on the other side, we get a really bright spot, like right in between the two. Assume that, well, yeah, like equidistant in the center between the two beams, we see a really bright spot of light, or a really bright column of light, if you like, a band of light on the other side. And then we see another bright spot here, and another bright spot here, and another less bright spot here, and another less bright spot here. And there's spots that sort of get dimmer and dimmer as you get farther and farther away, and all sort of look symmetric with each other. And so you get this pattern of spots on the other side. And at first, you might think, oh, okay, I guess I sort of understand it. Like it might or might not surprise you that, well, At first, what you might think, and a lot of people would think, and Thomas Young would think, one thing that you might expect to get on the screen is you might not expect to get that. You might expect to get that's what we actually see is like a bunch of bright spots that get sort of dimmer and dimmer as they get farther and farther away. But there's a whole bunch of them that are centered on one super bright spot right in the center. We see this pattern, and there's no mirrors or anything like that involved here. And there's only two slits. There aren't a whole bunch of slits. Like you can, yeah, there's just these two slits. And this is what we get on the other side. And the idea, before I go any further, is that Thomas Young is not a theoretician. He's not a concept man in the way that Einstein is remembered as being a concept man, or even like Newton or something. Thomas Young is not someone that writes down a whole bunch of theories and has a whole bunch of predictions or a whole bunch of like logical definitions about what he thinks the world should be like or will be like or anything. What he is a technically expert man. I mean, what he is incredibly, incredibly skilled and fastidious and reliable at creating and setting up and reproducing and measuring apparatus such as lenses and screens and slits. So so this is not like a slipshod sort of like random thing, and this isn't necessarily even what he expected, but this is what he finds when he super carefully puts two slits in a screen and sends light through those two slits. And because he's him, there's some good reason to believe that he only did put two slits in the screen. He didn't, for example, what he didn't do is put a whole bunch of slits in the screen and therefore end up with a whole bunch of dots of light on the other side, right? What also didn't happen, what we didn't see, and I'm not saying anything is wildly interesting just yet, but I am saying, oh God, what just happened? Whoa. Oh, I see. Sorry. Okay. Now, assuming that Young didn't make a mistake, that he actually carefully set this up, and not only am I assuming that because Young was that kind of guy, but in fact, just with the benefit of historical hindsight, like this thing was, as I say, done and redone with sort of increasingly advanced technology over and over for a number of reasons. But one is to make sure that we actually saw what we think we saw and that it wasn't like some mistake in the apparatus. What you might expect to see, okay, if you really are sending light through two slits that are like equidistant from us, the center point, and which are both the same size as each other, what you might expect to see is like a really bright spot of light sort of near one of the slits. And obviously my drawing is terrible. I mean, maybe this bright spot, you know, should be a little bit higher up or something like that. And you might, but you know, forgive me that. And so you might expect to see like a bunch of light land on the other side on a straight trajectory from one slit, and a bunch of light end up on the screen from the other slit. And maybe you could even imagine that then light would sort of spread out from there. Like maybe some light wouldn't hit dead, since light spreads, light does spread out in all directions equally from whether it's a candle or from a light bulb or from a slit. Like you can imagine the light spreading out. So it's not necessarily shocking that we get light in places that are not like deadly aimed directly from the slit. But if you think about it kind of logically, and if you trust this apparatus, you could imagine a world, and maybe you even would imagine or should imagine a world where you get a bunch of light that goes directly through one slit and lands, here. A bunch of light goes directly through the other slit and lands directly across from it. And then some sort of pattern like fades out from each one of those bright spots. Like that would make some kind of sense. If we were picturing light going through these slits in one kind of a way, particularly if light, for example, and this is what Young was trying to figure out, if light is made up of a stream of tiny, tiny little particles, little thingy things, little tiny dots that are like electrons or like protons or something, that may or may not be called photons. If light were ultimately made of little grains that maybe were so small that we couldn't ever detect under a microscope to this point, or maybe we had never seen, maybe in 1804, we didn't have the technology to like actually investigate a beam of light so closely that we could see the little grains that were made up of. But if it were made up of grains, right, then, and you fired a bunch of grains through these two slits, then you would expect, so what I'm really trying to say is, this purple possibility where I wrote what we might expect to see if a beam of light is ultimately made up of tiny, tiny things that, granted, might be so tiny that we can't see them yet. And they might be so crowded together, they might be so close together that they always look like one just blur, right? Like we're all open to that possibility. Light moves really, really fast. Light moves, in fact, at 186,000 miles per second. So we're all acknowledging, like today, we're acknowledging in 1804, and we've been acknowledging since at least like 1582 that light moves so fast and is so elusive that we're not claiming we know exactly what's inside a beam of light. So it's possible that a beam of light does consist of little tiny grains that we might call particles, or little tiny grains that could be counted if only we had the technology to, or if not counted, at least separated. Here's a grain, here's not a grain, here's a grain, here's not a grain. Here is a particle, here's the space between particles, here's a particle here. We could all imagine that possibility, and people did imagine that possibility. But what Young was doing was saying, well, okay, hold on a second, let's set it up. Like I'm good enough at focusing a beam of light. I'm reliable enough and technical enough to actually send a beam, to split a beam into two small beams and send it on two journeys. And the thing is that if light were consisting of these tiny, tiny, tiny little grains, then sure, then grains would either go through, then a bunch of grains would go through one slit, a bunch of grains would go through the other slit, and each grain that came through a slit might not bounce onto the screen perfectly on the other side. They might go different spots. And the more grains that land on the other side, the brighter we would see light, right? So what we could imagine is if it were made of grains and we did this over and over and over again, or if we did it with enough grains of light, it wouldn't be surprising at all to see a bright spot across from one slit and then some lesser and less bright spots like spreading out from it. And it wouldn't be that surprising to see a bright spot across from the other slit and same symmetric pattern spreading out from it. But that is totally not what happens. What happens, first of all, is that there's this bright spot in between the two slits, okay? And then far more to the point, and here's really the point, not only is there this bright spot in between the two slits, and there isn't particularly bright spots across from either two slits, but then if you look out from that central bright spot, and again, so I'm comparing, I'm saying the purple line, the purple screen is what you would expect to see if light were consisting of little grains that we call particles, or little particles that we call photons. That's not what actually happens in this experiment. What actually happens is you get this big bright spot in the center between the two slits, and then much more disturbing than that, you don't just get like fuzzy light spreading out from there with less and less intensity, with more and more dimness. What you get are alternating bands. You get bright spot in the center and then dark spot, and then bright spot, like granted less bright than the original one, but a bright spot, and then dark spot, and then you get bright spot, and then and et cetera, et cetera. So you, in other words, in fact, let me even make this more vivid. Like I could imagine having brightness that then dims out, and I could imagine brightness that then sort of dims out or fuzzes out. That's really what I was trying to say there. But we don't get that. We get brightness that alternates between bright and dark, and bright and dark, and bright and dark. We get this light, dark pattern on the screen in reality in Young's experiment. And in every version of this same experiment that we've ever done since, whether it's with light bulbs going through two slits, and now we can make slits that are really, really small, you know, or even lasers that are going through slits that are really, really small. No matter how we do this basic thing now, with no matter how advanced the technology is, and again, his technology was incredibly advanced for his time. I'm just looking at the time. Okay, it was a breakthrough for his time, but you know, but we've done much better than that since. No matter how we do it. Now, here's the thing. Sorry, one second. This is a big deal, actually. I mean, it sounds very, very like picky and obscure, but this is a big deal. What Young got on the opposite screen, on the screen on the far side, was counter to intuitive expectations, but not counter to his expectations. He was doing this for a reason. He was doing this to show something that he suspected and that people had suspected before him, but no one was able to show. No one had the technical expertise to show before him. What Young said about this, and what we say to this day, even though there's other things that are said as well, what Young said is, and again, I'm sure you've heard this, but I just want to spell it out. What Young said is, the thing that we get on the opposite side does make sense and is not surprising, as long as light is not consisting of tiny, tiny little particles. Like, yes, if a beam of light is a bunch of little light BBs that are just being fired and fired and fired out whenever there's a candle or whenever there's a sun light going through a lens or whatever, if light is a stream of tiny particles, no matter how tiny they are, then they would land on the screen in the way that we drew for the pink line, for the purple line. But they wouldn't land on that screen. They would land on the screen the way they actually do if what we were observing here is the interference of crests and troughs of waves. In other words, let me read. Tell me if I should go back to this. So I'm about to go to the next screen, but this says, according to Young's interpretation, what we find on the far screen is an interference pattern. The alternating bands of light and dark can be explained fully and only. Well, I'm going to write that. They can be explained. Oh, wait, I'm looking at the chat for 1 second. Yeah, totally. Okay, so there's 100%. Yes, what Kat is saying in the chat. So it's not only like it is. I mean, I don't mean that sarcastically. Like, so here's the deal, right? Like, and I think you do know from experience in other classes, or from experience with waves in general, and particularly let's say, or did you do like with one of the simulation labs you did in this class, like that waves consist of crests and troughs, especially if they're transverse waves, and the thing is, I'm pausing for a second. Well, yeah, I mean, on the one hand, you've known for a long time, like even before you went into all this deep mathematics and simple harmonic oscillation, all that, you've known in a ton of other classes, and you can see in whichever lab it was here, when a crest of a wave is moving along and hits another crest and hits a crest going in the opposite direction, what happens is momentarily the two crests occupy the same place at the same time, and momentarily they become one big crest, right? I mean, like that's actually a big deal, but in some ways you're used to it, because you see it all the time, and you've seen it in other contexts of other classes. When a crest hits a crest, it makes a bigger crest. when a trough hits a trough, it makes a bigger trough. Specifically, if a crest of height 5 meters hits a crest of 5 meters, what happens at that moment is we get a crest of height 10 meters at that moment and at that place. Furthermore, as you know, and it's like almost taken for granted at this point, if a crest of height 5 meters hits a trough of height -5 meters, what you get at that point in space and time is a crest of 0 meters, a trough of 0 meters, right? Like, in other words, the amplitudes of waves add arithmetically and obey negative signs. And in some ways, that's like a total yawn, like you've known that for years, like crest plus crest makes bigger crest, crest plus trough makes cancellation, makes destructive interference, like Kat said. But that's an enormous deal, because as obvious it is that waves do that in a way, I mean, I think, or as used to, we are very used to the fact that waves do that. But let's stop and remember for a second that it's not that waves don't just do that. Only waves do that. Baseballs don't do that. Let me be more clear. I wish I were not a terrible person writing like this, but remember, yeah, this is not legible at all. And it's only like the biggest point ever. So you'd think I would try to make this somewhat legible. Remember back to discussion, like way toward the beginning of the class, the whole thingy thing unthingy, discussion we had with trying to put, having one thing occupy 2 space points at one time point, having one thing occupy 2 time points at one space point. We did this, right? Please tell me, we did do the whole unthingy thing here, right? I mean, I feel like I remember talking about this with us. Please, someone tell me if we the 5 tasks with we had 2 things on front of our desk and we tried to do 5 tasks that were possible or impossible. Does anybody remember this? Let me stop for a second. Do you guys, I'm not asking you to remember the results, but do you remember doing a thing in this class with me about 5 tasks, some of which were possible and some of which were impossible with 2 objects on the desk?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Sorry, you cut out for a second. You were frozen.
Oh.
I don't know if we heard you.
I'll take it. That's whatever the reason. Okay. So yeah, that thing, when we were discussing unthingy things versus thingy things, like the conclusion we came to toward the beginning of this class is like we were testing out different activities that were possible or impossible with 2 objects. And what we came to conclude was that what makes a thing what makes a thingy, what makes a particle is that is not just that it occupies space and time, like everything occupies in space. Everything that we ever deal with in physics occupies space and time, and everything that we deal with in physics occupies space and time in a measurable, quantifiable, predictable, analyzable way. Like everything we deal with in physics is moving through space and time in an analyzable, measurable, predictable way. But there are certain rules that govern how we occupy space and time. And some things are restricted in space and time. Some things cannot occupy 2 points in space at one point in time. And they can't be at one point in space at one point in time with another thing. Such things are called particles. Like something is a thing if it can't be two places at once, and if it cannot be at the same place at the same time as some other thing, i.e. baseballs. Okay, a baseball, or like the center of a baseball, is either here right now, or it's there right now, or it's here right now and it's there later on, or it's here right now and it's here later on. Whatever. A baseball at any given point in time is at one point in space. It can't be in 2 points in space at once. Similarly, a baseball cannot be at the same point in space at one time as another baseball, right? If I have a baseball sitting here and another baseball comes along, it bangs into the first baseball and knocks it out of place. This is what we really mean if we, by material or tangible or palpable or concrete or massive or particular or discrete or countable. Any of these words, what they ultimately refer to is objects that cannot share space and time with other objects. Baseballs don't share space with other objects. Either this baseball is here right now or that baseball is here right now. And if this other baseball tries to come, it knocks the other baseball out of kilter. Similarly, remember, even with like liquids, which seem very elusive, like even liquids, you put a chunk of ice into a liquid and the liquid spreads out and then you get water and then you get displacement, right? The height of the whole liquid will rise if you put ice or put whatever in the water, because you can't actually have those bits of solid occupy the same space as those bits of liquid. Even gases, as elusive as they are, gases are real things. And you can't have gas particle occupy the same space at the same time as balloon material particle. So when you blow into a balloon, when you blow the gas in there, the gas actually pushes the balloon material away. Even though you can't see the gas, you can see that it won't share space with other matter, with other material. That's why solid, liquid, gas are called the 3 states of matter, because those are the 3 different ways that material can be material. But that's only material. That's what particles are like. Particles can't share a space at a time with another particle, but waves can. This is one of the ways in which waves are totally real, right? Like sound is totally real, and it totally moves through space and time at a measurable, observable, reproducible, measurable, analyzable, predictable rate. Like sound moves through space, through air at 340 meters per second relative to the air. But when we say that sound moves from my mouth to your ears at 340 meters per second, we're saying that air is moving, but we're not saying that any bit of air is moving from my mouth to your ear at 340 meters per second. We're not saying that anything is moving from I know I've said this a million times, but there are things in physics that are not things. Sound is one of them. Any kind of wave is one of them. A wave is a phenomenon, but it's not a thing. One demonstration of that, and that I'm getting back to this now, one important feature of that is, and we're all used to it, but if you think about it, it's really wild. Like a crest of a water wave can be riding along, and then it hits another crest of a water wave of the same set of waves, right? Or it could be you could send vibrations along a string. So you have a crest of a string riding along, and it starts to encounter another crest of that same string wave that's going on. When the two crests come to the same point in space and they arrive at that same time, they don't knock each other out of the way because they're not actually things. They're not actually in the way of each other. They're not actually taking up space and time. Like some information is, but no thing is. So a crest can be over here right now at this moment, while another crest arrives here at this moment, and the two crests for one moment be both occupy that point in time. Again, no object can do this, and they suddenly morph into each other and become one big crest for that moment. That's already weird enough. Like, just like note that, or like same idea that like while I'm shouting right now and you're hearing me, if my son burst in the room and shouted at the same time, or if one of you like got so excited that you had to say something, then a third person in the room, then if I'm saying stuff right now and another one of you starts talking at the same time, then the rest of you are going to hear my voice and the other person's voice at the same time, meaning the sound from me is going to hit your eardrum at the same time as the sound from someone else. And if I sang one note and the other person sang a different note, you would hear a chord. You'd hear them both at the same time. You get so used to it, we don't think about it. But think about it, that's bizarro that one note didn't bang the other note out of the way. The reason is that neither note actually existed in any kind of material way. They don't bang each other out of the way. They co-occupy a point in space at a point in time for that point in time. Two crests will become one big crest for a moment. And then what's even weirder to me, what's even weirder is, I mean, just when I might be thinking, okay, so it's like, I guess it's like clay, like you throw a clay ball and another clay ball, and then they become one big clay ball. I guess they just like morph into each other and they combine and they become one big thing. Is that really that big of a deal? I think to myself, well, yes, it is, because one moment later, each of the crests keeps on passing along its merry way. Like each crest emerges from that big mama crest and keeps going off in the other direction with the same height that it ever had prior to the collision, meaning that each crest somehow retained its identity, its height, its amplitude, somehow remembered, if you're not consciously remembered, but somehow preserved the information that is what it is. Like, so a crest will hit another crest, become a big crest for a moment, but then neither of the crests gets lost. The clay doesn't actually get all immersed in the other clay. The information of each crest is somehow retained in the universe, and the crests keep going their merry way, signifying number one, that waves do this thing called interference. Like this, I know you all know it's called interference, but interference is the act. Interference is interference is a manifestation of, or is a demonstration of two things being at the same place at the same time, only they're not things, they're wave pulses, right? Furthermore, and that's already like, that's something that particles don't do. Only waves can interfere because waves are not actually things. Furthermore, At any moment that you, and I'm looking at the time, I'm not trying to lose, okay. At any moment that you observe destructive interference, like crest plus trough equaling flat, think about that for a minute. Like that means for a moment, some information's coming in, and then for one moment, for one point in time and space, information plus information is yielding zero information. Put more concretely, in the case of this experiment, what we're saying is, what Young was saying, what Young was predicting and trying to demonstrate was that if we're getting all these spots on the screen of darkness in between spots of brightness, it's just about impossible to explain or impossible to accept if we were shooting a bunch of things through the slits. Like why would we have spots? Like for any spot you can imagine, for any, what I'm trying to say is, even if some spots on the screen are more likely to be arrived at from slits than other spots on the screen, there's no reason at all that as you get closer to one slit, you would have less likelihood of particles arriving there. Like you could imagine as you get farther and farther away from both slits, you would have less and less likelihood of particles arriving there. So you could imagine things getting dimmer and dimmer as we get farther and farther away from the slits. And in fact, I would imagine that if what we were firing through the slits were tiny little particles of light. But if what we're getting on this screen is a lot of light, then darkness, then a lot of light, then darkness, then a lot of light, then darkness, that means something really funky is happening in these regions between the bright spots. It means that we're getting spots on the screen where light is coming in from one slit and light is coming in from the other slit. But what we're seeing is darkness. That makes no sense if light consists of little balls of light. But if light consists of waves, if light travels, consists of crests and troughs, well, then you can start to imagine how what these dark spots on the screen are. I mean, this is like what Kat said like a million years ago. What the dark spots on the screen are not a major surprise as long as you picture the light as consisting of crests and troughs, because every one of those little dark regions is a place where crests are perpetually hitting troughs. In other words, actually, I'm gonna write this on the next page. Sorry. What I mean, you know, in some sense, I'm taking too long to explain this as always. In another sense, this cannot be, no amount of time is sufficient to really discuss this. What I'm saying in the end is that when you fire light through two slits and you see what happens on the opposite screen, whether it's with the cutting edge technology of the day of 1804, or if it's with cutting edge technology of our day, you find light, dark, light, dark, light, dark, light, dark on the opposite screen. And that makes perfect sense and is perfectly reasonable if what you're seeing is an interference pattern. And it makes no sense if you don't say that what you're seeing is an interference pattern. I also want to rush to add that, as you can imagine, we can get very, very particular about the numbers here. We can make measurements about where we find the dark spots. And indeed, they end up exactly where you would expect if you knew, if we were to ascribe a certain wavelength and frequency to light, et cetera, et cetera. So what I'm saying is this. What I'm saying on the next page. Let me just look at the time. I know I said, all right, maybe, oh, right. Oh yeah. So, right. So in terms of what's in the chat, right. So just to be clear or technical for a minute, right. So a crest is a high point in a wave pulse, and a trough is a low point. And what a node is a place of perpetual destructive interference. Like a node, a node is not a trough or a crest. A node is a place where crests are perpetually slamming into troughs, and vice versa. A node is a place where wherever a crest is sent out from one slit. Sorry, let me back up. In fact, since this is in the chat, the word node is good. And technically this whole thing is called a standing wave. Like, remember, the whole idea of this apparatus is we sent a column of light through the original slit. Like, we believe we're dealing with a column of light of certain properties, certain color, certain brightness, whatever. Then it splits into two twin beams through the two small slits. And we're saying that both of those beams have identical properties to each other. So if we now, if we now start saying, okay, we think what's going through these slits are waves, if we believe that now, which we wouldn't necessarily have reason to believe except for what's landing on the other side. But if we say that these things are wave, then the way that we can picture this, right, is like this. Like, those are supposed to be like, each one of those lines is like a crest. And they keep spreading out. Now that was a terrible last one, but what we're saying is, remember, we think whatever's happening at one slit is identical to what's happening at the other. Like, whether these are particles or waves, like, we think that the two slits, they're meant to be mirror images of each other, twins of each other. So imagine that these things are waves. then what we don't believe that only crests are coming out of one slit or something like that. We believe that what's coming out of one slit is like a crest and then a trough and then a crest and then a trough, and same thing with the other slit, a crest and then a trough and then a crest and then a trough. So we believe whenever a crest comes out of one slit, then necessarily a crest is coming out of the other slit, right? And when a trough comes out of one slit, a trough is coming out of the other slit, right? So what's coming out of the slits is the same thing at the same time. Now, remember, all waves travel always at one and only one speed relative to their medium. So whether or not I know this speed, I believe that all these ripples are going to travel at the same speed as one another. They're never going to, no ripple is going to catch up to another ripple, because that's not the way waves work. So when a crest comes out of one slit, a crest comes out of the other, and they start traveling along. Now they're traveling at the same speed as each other. So if we pick a point equidistant between the two slits, then we've picked a point that is the same distance from each slit. And we know that the same thing left each slit at the same time. Like, so a crest left one slit, a crest left the other slit. They're both traveling the same distance, and they're traveling the same speed because they're all waves in the same medium. So we would expect that at a spot that's equidistant from the two, whenever a crest arrives at that point equidistant from the two, a crest will arrive from the other one. Again, because a crest left, because what was leaving both was the same thing at the same time, and they're both traveling the same distance, and they're both traveling the same speed. So each crest should take the same amount of time to get to the central point between them. So whenever a crest arrives at the central point between them, we would expect a crest to arrive from the other. And when a trough arrives there from one, a trough would arrive from the other. So what happens at the point equidistance between the two is huge amounts of motion. In other words, constant constructive interference, like at the point in between the two. That's called an antinode. So we'll get huge crest, then huge trough, then huge crest, then huge trough, huge amount of energy, huge fluctuation. That's a hugely intense bright spot. If we go a little bit above the bright spot, though, or a little bit below, in fact, if we go into the exact right place, if we pick a place, imagine picking, sorry, let me say, that's the most obvious example. But now imagine you could find other places where you're going to get bright spots, because if you go a little bit farther up the screen and you find another spot, like, again, assuming these things are waves now, if you go up a little bit, how high? Well, if you go high enough so that the distance traveled from one slit is exactly a wavelength greater than the distance traveled from the other slit, right? Then even though crest number one leaves one slit and crest number one leaves the other slit at the same time, they're traveling along. But now crest number one hits the screen on the other side. If we've looked at a point on the screen that's just far enough that crest number two is like, it still has a full more wavelength of distance to get there, because it's like a farther route to travel, then we're looking at a place where crest number one from one slit arrives just as crest number two from the other slit arrives, right? It's not the same crest, so to speak. It's a crest that's like a wavelength behind. But in other words, what I'm saying is, if you look at spots on the screen that are specific spots, if you look at a spotlight here, imagine like if you look at this spot right here, the two lengths that have to be traveled from the slits are not the same. They're not the same. So there's no reason to expect that they're not going to take the same amount of time, like a crest and trough, to travel there. But if L1 is greater than L2 by exactly a wavelength, or by exactly two wavelengths, or exactly three wavelengths, et cetera, then whenever you get a crest from slit one, you'll get a crest from slit two. It won't be the same crest. It'll be a crest that left a bit later or earlier or whatever. But as long as you're looking at spots that are, as long as you're looking at spots for which the difference in paths, what we call the path difference, is an integer multiple of a wavelength, then you'll get bright spots. But by the same logic, if you look at spots for which L1 and L2 differ by half wavelengths, if L1 is greater than L2 by a half a wavelength, I mean, remember, there's a full wavelength between a crest and the next crest. There's a full wavelength between a trough and the next trough, but there's a half a wavelength between a crest and the next trough. So if you pick a spot where the paths differ by some integer multiple of half wavelengths, then anytime a crest is coming in from one, a trough will come in from the other. It might be crest number 1 and trough number 7, or crest number 2 and trough number 8, or whatever, depending on where you're looking. But in other words, there's a pattern of light and dark, or in other words, there's spots where light from one plus light from the other yields total darkness, because there are spots, and there are repeated spots, a pattern of spots for which whenever we're getting a crest from one, we're necessarily getting a trough from the other, or whenever we're getting a trough from one, we're necessarily getting a crest from the other. So we'll get a pattern of light, dark, because we'll get a pattern of permanent constructive interference, permanent destructive interference, permanent, and we're just about done with this. Okay. So, I mean, so these bright and dark spots are not just like crests and troughs. They're a place of permanent cancellation, permanent constructive interference, and permanent destructive interference. They're called antinodes and nodes. The dark spots are, just like people are saying in the chat, the dark spots are called nodes. The bright spots are called antinodes. It makes so much sense that here's the thing, like, again, as often is the case in physics, hopefully in a way, some of you are like bored by, I mean, not like hopefully, but some of you might be like, yeah, I get it. I got it 15 minutes ago, Yaverbaum, or I got it 5 years ago when like somebody else explained this to me. Like, I'm not all excited because I think it's such a hard idea. But what I am, I mean, it is hopefully a very straightforward idea that you could get a pattern of bright, dark, as long as you got a pattern of constructive interference, destructive interference, constructive interference, destructive. But the big point is that you would never, ever get that pattern if you were firing BBs or baseballs or electrons or particles of any kinds. Particles don't do that. Particles don't interfere. You can't have baseball plus baseball yielding no baseball, even for one moment or one spot. But you can with waves. So this thing, and I'm watching the time. Okay, 6:45. So I'm going to wrap this up in a second, and we're going to see about the exam. The point of the two-slit interference experiment is it is, to this day, I mean, there's other weird implications of it. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, there's a lot of other things that go on with it. And there are also other things that happen with light that get interesting in the 20th century, without a doubt. But this thing, this idea, whenever you hear of an interference pattern or light going through the interference pattern or light going through two slits, the whole punchline of this is that this is the reason that I'll say it this way. Sorry. Whoa. Just to be as clear as I can be, then we will pause. I am saying, because the whole subject of light is a deep one. Go and answers and questions go on and on and on with light. But to this day, if and when anybody ever says that light is traveling as a wave, or in any context in which we believe that light is traveling as a wave, this is the reason. I mean, to this day, I mean, there's also theoretical mathematical reasons, but I mean, experimentally or evidentially, this to this day is why. Because light demonstrates interference patterns, because light interferes, because we can set up conditions for under which light plus light can equal darkness, just like, let me say that again. Because to this day, because we can set up conditions under which light plus light can equal darkness, because light demonstrates an interference pattern, because light interferes with itself in this manner, that is why to this day we say, when we do, that light travels as a wave, not as a stream of particles. And that means whenever we're saying that, we're saying like the fact that light plus light can equal darkness, the fact, and literally that is what we're saying, because a beam of light plus a beam of light can produce no light at all. We say, okay, then light is not a thing. At least in this context, when light is not traveling as a bunch of things, because you can't have thing plus thing equaling no thing. You can't have thing plus thing being in the same place at the same time, much less making no thing. But the fact that you can with light, you can make light occupy this spot while light from over here also occupies this spot, and together they make darkness. Because light can do that, we say, oh my God, at least under certain conditions, at least in certain contexts, a stream of light, a beam of light, a ray of light is like a ray of sound or a beam of sound. Like, it's not a thing, it's a phenomenon, it's a behavior, it's an activity. It's a highly organized, staggered collection of oscillators. Like, when we say that light is a wave, that's what we mean, and this is why. So all the stuff that we do in this class about harmonic oscillations and then staggered oscillations and the wave equation and waves and all the stuff about sound, according to this business of two-slit interference, we can then infer, oh, well, everything we said about sound, even though it's a little bit easier to test and easier to picture and more reliable, we apparently can say about light, and including that apparently light must undergo Doppler shifts just like sound. That's what this all means. Now, I want to pause for a couple of reasons. One, I promised I was going to like post the exam, so I want to do that, or at least in some fashion. So I'm going to pause for a second. Also, I do have to admit, I mean, again, other things also happen with light. Like, light does other things too, which makes this whole topic sort of infinitely rich and go on forever. And I don't want to pretend that that's not the case. I mean, it turns out that there were other experiments also later on that show completely different results. And that's very bizarre and very weird. And that's a whole other class unto itself. I'm not saying that, in other words, well, yeah, in other words, there are independent reasons in other circumstances to say that light does travel as a bunch of things. Light is weird that way. Sound is not. Sound always travels as a wave. There's no such thing as a sound thing. Heat also, I might add, heat is another example. There's no such thing as like a heat thing. There's no heat ton or something. I mean, there is something called phonons, but there's no such item called an item of heat. Heat is a phenomenon. It's the motion of a lot of molecules moving in a certain way. Same thing with sound. And according to this, at least in certain contexts, same thing with light. And according to this, anything that we believe about waves, such as Doppler effect, we can believe about light. Again, it's also true in other contexts that light apparently could do some other things, which is really weird, but that doesn't contradict this fact that under these conditions, light does this. Now, let me just pause and let that sink in for a second. Like, let me see if I can put up your exam. Hold on. And I was also going to tell you right now, since we are going to run out of time soon, all of what I just said helps you understand why that you can answer true or false for that question I now. There's still two other questions I haven't said anything about. They're much faster to say something about. I notice I didn't give you any numbers here, and I won't expect you to do any numbers. Like, you won't have to crunch numbers with this. I just need you to get this point and see where it fits in with the rest of the points. And I'll say the same thing about the other last remaining item, but let me, bear with me for a second. Or Paul, or you could even, frankly, if anybody wants to take a 5-minute break or go get something to drink or go to the bathroom, we have 20 minutes. Yeah, do it. Like, take a break. I'm just going to post this thing now so you have it. Oh. Sorry. Okay. Oh, wow. Okay. All right. Sorry. Bear with. Sorry. I'm just about. Oh. Okay. Sorry. Just bear with me for one moment. Sorry. 1 second. Talk amongst yourselves. Oh, okay. Oh my God. What was it?
Professor, if you are talking to us, you are on mute. We cannot hear you.
All right, thank you. I'm actually not sorry. Okay, I just got interrupted in kind of a disastrous way. I'm sort of talking to myself. I'm just trying to upload this for you guys. Ay, ay, ay. Something bad just happened. And I know we have now 4 minutes. I want to get this to you. All right. This is not the way I want to end things, but okay. Bear with me for, and I know the clock is about to run out. I just want to make sure you have this before we. Okay. You're just about there. I know you're being very patient. Okay, we have like 1 minute. I do understand that. Here's the deal. What I just so that there's no so there's no I don't know what ambiguity or whatever. What I just put in the Google Classroom. Hopefully, you'll confirm if you see it. It says, "Hear ye the final exam." It says due Tuesday, 11:59 p.m., May 25th. It's worth 100 points. I'm going to tell you two, like what's there is the exam, but I have to tell you two things. One, I know, or I'm pretty sure that, and so I cleaned it up. Like I took out the questions that you can't answer. And I took out the solutions, even though you have the solutions and you're meant to have them. Like this is very, very similar to the packets that you were just looking at. And now I see what the confusion was between the two packets, but you're allowed to use all the solutions that you have. You're allowed to use everything, but the actual final exam itself is now in your Google Classroom. There is a portal for you to submit your final thing to us by Tuesday of next week. I will warn you, I know, first of all, there still is some bad typing and stuff like that. And the Walter section at the end, the lab section at the end, I think he still has to replace with an updated version. I think he said that. I'm not sure, but what I'm trying to say, and I know we're like out of time, but like there still might be an update to this. Like you could consider this the rough draft or whatever. There still might be an update or correction. And if so, we'll let you know, and then, discard the old document and replace the new, but we're not going to change it radically or anything like that. We're only going to change it to correct it or clarify it and so forth. So in other words, you could start working on it right now, or you could wait a couple of days, but that's the portal. That's the place where you'll put the final exam, and it is basically what we've been talking about. Questions that I didn't get to, I took out. If there's any questions or ambiguities, you can text me between now and then for sure, or Walters. And I feel terrible that now I did not mean to get to the end of time like this. But I'll also, and if you have to go, go. I mean, I will let you all go in a second too. But if wait, let me look in the chat. Oh yeah. And any corrections or updates, like part of it is I have a call into Walters and I just to make sure we're on the same page. If there's any corrections or updates or whatever, it will be done by tomorrow night and by him and in that portal. But that's the portal. And if someone turns in something early or something, then we'll understand that that's what happened. We'll understand. But the ultimate, and again, if you have to go now, go. I did not mean to end this way, and I'm a little bit flustered, but just to summarize, like why I've just been spending all that time on that slit thing, the ultimate point is that light acts like a wave. So, and I know I've said this before, but now maybe you can put it in context of this exam. So therefore, if color, and maybe you write this down if you want, if color is to light as pitch is to sound, that is like lower frequency light waves are redder colors and higher frequency light waves are more violet-y colors, and that is the case, then if light, when it reaches us from stars, is more red to us than it is to the stars, that tells us that stars are moving away from us as they send the light to us. Hence, we say the universe is expanding. And that is a very weird thing to say if we didn't have evidence for saying it, because when we say the universe is expanding, we're saying all of space and all of time, the whole package is spreading out. Like we're not just saying that objects are taking up more space. we're saying that space is taking up more space, whatever that means. We're saying that the whole kit and caboodle of the universe is spreading out into what? I have no idea. Why should we even accept that idea? It's so weird. Because the light from stars is redder to us than it is to the stars. And that makes sense if light is a wave and waves undergo Doppler effects. That's like the summary of the material. That's the point that we're trying to see. I mean, I've taken too long. I really didn't mean to end quite in this jagged way. If you happen, if we, the other reason we might update the exam, if I find any other questions that I don't feel you can answer, I'll notice that and I'll take them out, or, you'll notice it. But I think you can answer the things you can answer now. I don't think the exam will be a big stressful thing. We're asking you to practice the Doppler effect right at the beginning just to show that you get it, because it's like the tie-in for everything. I think you should be able to rock this. I think if there's questions, you'll text me. I think I've gone over time, but I think I will miss you guys terribly. Walters will miss you terribly. Quark, bless America, and go in peace. And I'll just wait to see if there's any questions. But goodbye. I mean, you could say goodbye. I'll wait till you're all gone, but goodbye. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for waiting for all this time. I'm going to miss you very much, and I'm going to look into this Discord thing. Thank you very much. Okay, bye.
Professor, thank you so
Bye.
much for everything.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Talk to you soon.
Thank you. Yes, talk to you soon. Awesome. Okay.
Professor.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're the best.
No, you're the best. Don't make me cry. Don't make me cry. Don't make us. Okay. Bye. Thank you very much, guys. All right. That's funny. Okay, bye. That is very cool of you. I like the very much. Appreciate it. All right. I am actually going to cry, but no, I'm not, but I might. But all right. I'm just waiting to make sure you're all good. Okay. Cool. Thank you very much. Okay. Awesome. Thank you. Awesome. You guys are good. Thank you so much. I will miss you guys. Thank you for always being so early to come and late to go. I appreciate it, both of you. You both good? Jasmine and Gabe, you're good? Okay, I'm gonna go. Oh, thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Awesome. Thank you very much. I totally appreciate it. All right. Sorry about the spasticity. Okay.